Heartland, Season 1, Episode 1, Coming Home. Amy is a 15-year-old girl growing up in Hudson, Alberta, with a serious love of horses. She discovers that a horse named Spartan is being abused at Mallen's farm and convinces her mother Marion to rescue him. Amy's sister Lou comes home from New York to help when she receives devastating news. Refusing to put Spartan down, Grandpa Jack brings the horse back to Heartland, hoping that Amy can help him. Before she can help Spartan, she has to come to terms with what's happened to her mom. Also, her mom hired a new ranch hand who starts working at Heartland. In the start of the show, there is a terrible storm with torrential downpour, as well as thunder and lightning. As the storm continues, we see Amy and her mother packing up the horse trailer to head out on their journey of finding a troubled and injured horse. After finding the horse, they load him into the trailer and head back to Heartland Ranch. But while on their way back, things don't go as planned. They go terribly wrong. The horse ends up getting scared. When the thunder crashes down, he rocks the trailer, tipping it over and having the truck run off the road, down a steep hill, and hitting a tree, causing Amy and her mother to be seriously injured. Both Amy and her mom are taken to the local hospital, where they find out her mother has unfortunately passed away due to the accident and that Amy has survived but is in critical condition. Lou, Amy's older sister, is currently living in New York and receives a call explaining what has happened to her mom and sister. After hearing the horrible news, she books a flight as soon as possible home to help deal with everything going on. When Amy is released from the hospital, her sister picks her up and brings her home. Since the passing, the girls and their Grandpa Jack have to take a whole new approach to life by finding a way to run Heartland and deal with the new ranch hand that has been hired by their mother to complete his probation. When time bored, the new ranch hand shows up. Jack takes him into the loft of the barn and tells him this is where he will be staying. Ty asks about the girls, and Jack wonders if he means his granddaughters. When he finds out that's what he was talking about, he says to keep at least 10 feet away from them at all times. Amy goes into the barn to see Spartan, the troubled horse she picked up with her mom. After seeing the horse, she heads to the office to find Luke going through all of her mom's belongings. Amy wonders what she's doing, as she's not planning to stick around and will eventually head back to New York, where her job is. Lou says someone has to go through things, which results in the two getting into a little argument. At dinner, Ty asks what's going on the ranch, and both Amy and Lou explain that their mother was really good at working with horses and that just by looking at them, she would know what was wrong. Amy gets upset since Lou wants to run the place differently, so ends up leaving the table to head to her room. In the barn that night, Jack comes out to find Amy looking at Spartan. She tells him that the horse still doesn't trust her. Jack says that their mom used to say that she had a gift. She then goes into the story of the night her mom passed away and blames herself for the whole thing. The next day, Amy heads back to school, and Jesse, a guy who liked her and sent flowers with a card to the hospital while she was recovering, wonders why she never returned his calls. While Amy's at school, Lou heads to the bank to talk about the business plan she came up with for Heartland. The guy she's talking to thinks she could cut her losses and sell the ranch. With some convincing, she ends up getting him to look at her plan. When Amy arrives home from school that day, she asks Lou why one of their clients is picking up her horse when she's not ready to go home yet. Her sister explains that the owner thinks they are charging too much. Amy says they are hardly charging anything, which leads to the two having another argument. When Jack comes over to see what's wrong, she storms off saying Lou went to the bank and he should ask her what's going on. Jack heads over to his friend's horse stable to talk with her and get some advice. He told her he never thought he'd be raising kids again. He admits to not being great at it the first time. His friend says if you want to be good at raising kids, you have to buy them a little something, like a laptop, DVD, or a show jumper. She then turns her head and looks over at her daughter, who's walking out of the barn with her horse. Jack explains that he's a little short on money. She mentions that he's sitting on land that's worth a lot and should just put a for sale sign on his property. The next morning, Amy takes Spartan out of his stall to work on fixing him in the round pen outside. But when she starts, things don't seem to be going right, which has her yelling it's not her fault and she just wants to help him. Amy then has a flashback of her mother, which calms her down. When Spartan sees she's calm, he starts to trust her and walks right over. Lou heads back to the bank as she heard there was some good news. The man there tells her he likes her business plan and her offer, but wonders with going back to New York who would be there to implement it. Amy's friend Jessie and Sreya come over and tell her there's a party at Jesse's house tonight as his parents are out of town. They convince her to stop working with the horse and come join them. When leaving, Ty sees them heading out the driveway and asks Jack when quitting time is. Jack says he has a few more hours left and better get his work done since it looks like a storm could be coming. At the party, Jessie tells Amy that all he wanted to do last night was call her cell phone. She tells him that she doesn't have one. When hearing that, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the one he bought for her. Then, they both hear the door open and turn their heads to see Ty walking through. He asks if she knows that guy, and Amy says he works for them. Later in the evening, Jessie ends up getting drunk and falling into Amy. She tells him to get off. When Ty sees what's going on, he thinks she's in trouble and comes over to punch him. Amy gets mad and walks out of the party to head home. After coming back to the ranch from the party, Ty sees Lou and Jack unloading the bales. He goes to help but gets yelled at as he should have finished his job earlier so they wouldn't have to do it for him. While working with Spartan for a few days, he begins to trust Amy and she's able to start riding him. Jack and Mallory see what's happened and are proud of her accomplishments because she seems to have her mother's talent. Years ago, Amy and Lou's mother broke up with her husband Tim. He left to start his own life and they'd stayed with their mom on the ranch. The girls never really talked or saw their dad much. Tim sent Lou a card saying he would like to meet her by the mailboxes. She shows up to meet him, and Tim explains that he would like to be a part of his girls' lives again. He knows that he will have to start slow and take it one day at a time. In the end, we see Amy is riding Spartan down to her mother's grave to visit since she wasn't there the day of the funeral due to being in the hospital. She then realizes how well she did with Spartan and feels that she's inherited her mother's gift. The family is not sure if Amy will continue to work with horses like her mother or if Lou's plans will go through and the ranch will be sold.